And it is Christmas that comes once a year. And you know, it's an interesting thing. We're going to talk about the celebration of the birth of Christ. And even though they're trying to expunge that from the history books and make it about something else, it is the one time of year when you actually, I believe you do sense there's something a little bit different on Christmas Day. There's something, and even there are various stories of, like, during the Battle of the Bulge and during World War II, and even in the Christmas Eve was when Washington crossed over the Delaware. There's something, I think, about just the fact that there's a day commemorating the birth of Christ that creates a different moment in history that happens. And I think that this is a good time to contemplate what the gift is that God has given nations. And when you have freedom, such as we have, you have to be without that freedom to appreciate the gift. If you've never left the United States and been in a totalitarian place, I was in China, for instance, in 2012, and was in a controversial economic meeting that was shut down by the Communist Party. And all of our emails started to get bugged, and we started realizing we were having our internet taken over, and that we were being monitored. It was a creepy experience. It's one thing if it's done surreptitiously. It's another thing if it's done blatantly. And we had people following us around with cameras and filming and recording and shooting pictures of who we talked to and where we were. And it was bizarre. I paid $700 extra to get out of China 24 hours early, because I honestly was thinking, if something goes wrong with America right now, I could end up being a hostage and a prisoner here in China for the rest of my life. It had that kind of unsafe feeling. And what a strange elation when I flew back into the United States and got out and was going through passports and just could breathe the air of America. There are people that never experience that, and they don't realize what gift it is to have freedom, and then what a price you need to be willing to pay to keep that freedom. And I just, I want to remind you of that, because that's something that the gift of Christ is life, eternal life for individuals, but it's the gift of freedom for nations. And if a nation will embrace Christianity and Christ, it has a foundation for freedom. That's what's happening in Hungary. It's what's happening in Poland. And all the nations that are the most resilient and resistant to the party of Davos and the intimidation of Putin, it's those that have strong faith in the public square. And you wanted to share something before?
Oh, I was giving you my thoughts on the break there. I don't know how I can pivot into it off of that, because that was beautiful. But one of the things, when you talk about the Build Back Better plan, when we talk about, what Joe Manchin did and killing that bill, which is so great, there's this one verse in the Bible, Lance, and we've talked about it, but it's Jeremiah 1:10. And so it's the Lord speaking to Jeremiah, and he says, "See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms, to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant." And what I like about it is, I think it's a fundamental truth that before you can build and plant, you first need to tear down, destroy, uproot, and overthrow. And when we think about the policies that are being put forward, that just seem like it's a strategic weakening of America, the economy, our infrastructure, everything. It just seems like there's a strategic weakening that's happening, being done through policy and forcing businesses to issue mandates and enforce when police can't enforce. That it really does feel like we're in a process of uprooting, tearing down, destroying, and overthrowing those fundamental liberties you were just talking about, those God-given rights to every single person. Mm-hmm. And so when I think it's a little ironic that they call it Build Back Better, but before they can build back better, they have to tear down, destroy, and overthrow the will of the people, and who they're supposed to be representing.
And you cannot let them do that. You cannot let them do that. I was just reading the latest, which is the Pentagon is now monitoring, kind of like the Communist Party I was talking about. I couldn't wait to get out of China because they were monitoring what I did on social media. Well, they're monitoring what you like and what you read in the military. And they are, imagine this, that if you're liking conservative stuff or the wrong comedy or the wrong commentators or the wrong programs or watching things like Real America's Voice, you are considered to be an ideologic risk to the party and drummed out of the military. This is what Stalin did, and what Hitler did. You purge your military of everybody that thinks independently, and you only embrace those that are basically going to be the stormtroopers that will enforce your war against your political enemies.
Wow.
I mean, that's the Pentagon. We have got to do what you're talking about. I mean, as a Christian, I sometimes worry that we're in the end times, and that what you're looking at is the demise of the United States, the emergence of a global scenario with global rulers, kind of like the Bible talks about,
Sure.
an antichrist. Look, when you're looking at COVID and the economic breakdown of the world, the United States spending itself into weakness as a nation, you're looking at the fact that they want to. By the way, good news. Davos, World Economic Forum, they're meeting with Klaus Schwab in order to push the schedule on converting to a cashless society, all digital, on the basis of COVID, international economic recovery for all the nations, and climate change.
Yeah.
Because of this variant and the way that they're reacting to it in Europe, which is like hitting the panic attack, fear, they had to shut down their World Economic Forum gathering and move it up a year. I think God is literally giving us the gift of time.
Yeah.
I think God in his mercy is now saying, all right, lawlessness stole America's future, and there's enough lawlessness in America to let it happen. But God, I think, is moving a firewall against that lawlessness now, and he's uprooting, and he's pulling down, and he's tearing down what they were trying to destroy, and he's going to restore and establish something. It's coming to a head, folks. When I saw Davos couldn't do their World Economic Reset, and that Manchin would not let them do their spending into the third iceberg for the Titanic here, I said, my God, we're cutting it close, but it looks like God's giving us the gift of time.
Yeah, I think too. I think I think most people have come to this realization that what was in like 2019, that version of normal, I don't think we're going ever back to that version of normal, because we are so far down this road of tearing down, destroying. But I think, to your point, the opportunity here is that normal's up for debate. And so in the midst of things being pulled down, what type of populist backlash is coming, where in 2022, we're actually the ones that are able to build back better and build in the image that we would like. Does that make sense? And plant the ideas that we want to plant.
Absolutely. It's probable that I was watching Marjorie Taylor Greene at Turning Point, because Real America's Voice is doing some great coverage of that. And Ben Bergquam was doing some interviews. And Marjorie, I mean, we need women like this. She said, you've got to get beyond posting your outrage on Facebook. You've got to start to protest. You've got to start to do what the left does. You've got to show up, rattle the pots and pans, and make your voice heard. And her point is that America's experienced a communist takeover. Mm-hmm. She said, call it what it is. It's a left-wing, radical communist takeover. The Communist Party always uses words like, it's for your own health and safety that we're shutting you down, because they want to cloak their agenda of totalitarian control with your best interest at heart, like a parent who is actually a monster. Yeah. And so she said, this is how communists do it. They've already got social media. They've already got the mainstream media. They've already got the propaganda arms. They've already got the intelligence community, the FBI and the CIA and the military working woke with them against the patriots. They got 3 generals. Can you believe this? I know this is Christmas, but you might as well know. Washington, what was George Washington doing on Christmas Eve? He was planning his war, and he's going to surprise attack. We got to be ready for surprise attacks against the devil this year, because we've got 3 generals in Washington, in the Pentagon, who are warning that the biggest threat, it's always this, these guys are such nut jobs, is the militias, it's the white supremacists again, it's the Trump people, it's civil war. But you know, the truth of the matter is there's no civil war, because these guys are going to be so swept out of positions of power that they don't have to worry about armed resistance. They will never have the mandate to take American guns or American freedom or American votes or American children. They found that in Virginia. You can only push your dogma and your indoctrination program so far. College kids, they were swallowing it. You created your little army, and now you want to get your funding to perpetuate it. But you're not going to do it with the children of these suburban women. This is where you crossed a line. This is where you went too far. You attacked the wrong person. Just like with Manchin. You went too far. And now the pushback is, no, you can't have our children. And I think that family firewall is going to hit the education arena, and it's going to be in the midterms. It'll be our chance, but we cannot let the religious leaders in our country and the Kevin McCarthy's and the McConnells, we can't let these decaffeinated, weak leaders dictate what happens, because we got one shot. This is our trip to Trenton, like Washington had. His soldiers were emaciated. They were down to no shoes, bleeding feet in the snow. He had lost half of his Continental Army. He needed a win to keep America in the battle. And we need these wins right now. And that's why these wins are so priceless and important.
Yeah. And I always like to remind people that, we, the MAGA movement, put Trump in office. We made Trump, and he did an amazing job. He did everything we wanted him to do. But we're still here. And even though Trump's not in office, we're about to do something in 2022 with the populist movement. And we're also going to do something in 2024. So I'm looking forward to it. And we're not going away. And the polling numbers just show we're not going away. So it's fantastic.
We're not going away. I think Rush Limbaugh said it right. He said Trump didn't make the populist movement. The populist movement found somebody finally that could lead.
Yeah.
But the movement is here, with or without Trump. Thank God he's still here.
Hey, if you haven't seen me around as much on the platform recently, it's because all the explosive, incendiary things that I want to say, the Lance Rants, are on the podcast. Go to lancewalnut.com/podcast and hear the unbridled utterance